People don't give up. And I see the huge wave of solidarity across the country. I would never wish anyone to go through this experience, but this dramatic time provides people opportunity to express the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make difficult but right choices, and to help each other. This is the main thing, because when we help in each other, only in that moment, we are acutely aware what does it mean to be human.
As a human rights lawyer at the Center for Civil Liberties in Ukraine, Oleksandra Matviichuk holds violators accountable for their abuses as she documents thousands of war crimes. For this work and for her continued fight for freedom, justice, and democracy, Oleksandra was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022. This episode of Remarkable Women, Powerful Stories, hosted by Lynn Foley, contains details of violence. Please take care when listening to Aleksandra's journey.
When I was children and I was studying in school, I got acquaintance with Soviet dissidents. And suddenly, I appeared in a circle of fantastic people. People who say what they think and do what they say. People who had bravery to stood up their voice against the entire totalitarian Soviet machine. Dissident movement was severely persecuted in Soviet times. Part of people were killed. Part of people were jailed. Part of people were locked for forcible psychological treatment. All careers were ruined and families were separated, but they didn't give up. And being a child in a school, I was so excited and inspired by this example that I decided myself that I have to go to study law and to continue this fight for freedom and for human dignity.
It's an amazing story and so very different from the life I've led, Alexandra. So you've mentioned that you chose your first study area of law. How did you then go, your motivation for that is clear. How did you go from that into your early career roles?
I always try to do something good for society. And that is why being in law faculty of university, I created the youth forum in my school, at my home. I remember that when I was student, I told to myself that I would never ever do something which committed with criminal law, because I have a huge empathy to people and it's literally harm me. But now, and it's funny to compare, I work with documentation of war crimes. So I deal not just with criminal, I deal with international criminal and international humanitarian law, the most horrible atrocities. And what was interesting to reflect about this, that something which I evaluated like my vulnerability, literally, it is my strength, because I can do this work for 12 years only because I have empathy to people.
It is interesting that you decided you didn't want to do anything to do with criminals, and then here you are doing that now. It's interesting for me that it's like you've come around full circle. I think one of the most interesting things I found out about you when researching for this conversation and after meeting you is your role as the founder and the work you do in the Center for Civil Liberties in Ukraine. And then to notice that you had been, the organisation had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022. It'd be great if you can speak about the achievements of the centre and your contributions as the leader, because this is an incredibly important award and the work you're doing is brilliant.
Oh, thank you for these words. It's pleasant to hear, but I would like to emphasize that everything which we achieve, it's not our achievement. It's because ordinary people join to our work and help to protect human rights. Our organization is famous in Ukraine for the ability to massively involve ordinary people into human rights work. I will provide one example. During the Revolution of Dignity, I launched civil initiative Euromaidan SOS. We brought up several thousands of people to work 24 hours per day and to provide legal and other assistance to persecuted protesters. Because during the Revolution of Dignity, millions of people came to the streets and they peacefully demonstrating just for a chance to build a country where the rights of everybody are protected, government is accountable, judiciary is independent, and police do not beat students who are peacefully demonstrating. In response, pro-Russian authoritarian corrupt government started large-scale persecution. So every day, hundreds and hundreds of people who were beaten, arrested, tortured, accused in fabricated criminal cases passed through our care. It was a very difficult time. We slept 3-4 hours per day. And every day we had enormous fires to work with. But this experience provided me a huge lessons learned that when you can't rely on the legal instruments, when you can't rely on international system of peace and security, you can still rely on people. We get used to thinking through the categories of states and interstate organizations, but ordinary people have a much greater impact than they can even imagine.
Yes, and we've seen that throughout history, haven't we? How ordinary people coming together make significant change. And I know I've seen a lot in my lifetime, and I'm sure you have too. And it's still continuing to happen. And I guess later on in our conversation, I'll draw you on that notion of how ordinary people can continue to contribute to what the world needs at this time. Further, in researching you this last week or so, I found that at the World Economic Forum in Davos recently in January, you were honoured with the World Woman Hero Award. In a LinkedIn post at the time, you described how you spoke about Ukrainian women, quoting, "because courage has no gender." Can you please explore with me today your leadership, your strength, your dedication and courage, and that of all these women you know, and how collectively you make a difference during extremely challenging times?
As I mentioned before, I'm documenting war crimes with my team. When large-scale war started, we united our efforts with dozens of organizations from different regions and built a national network of local documentators. We covered the whole country, including the occupied territories. And working together, we jointly documented more than 98,000 episodes of war crimes. And it's a huge amount, but still just the tip of iceberg. And it's obvious that there are a lot of crimes against women among these 98,000 episodes. But let me assure you that women in Ukraine are not just victims. Women in Ukraine are fighters. I know enormous amount of fantastic women in different fields of society. Women joined armed forces. Women coordinate civil initiatives. Women take political decisions. Women document war crimes. Women are in the forefront of this battle for freedom and democracy. And I will repeat again and again, bravery has no gender. Let me illustrate it with one story of my friend and colleague, Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina. She was young, very talented. She received several international awards and unbelievably brave. She decided that it's her journalist obligation to come to territories that Russia occupied, to tell the truth what Russia is doing there. And she disappeared. Now we know that she was abducted, she was severely tortured, and illegally transferred to Russia, where she was kept, being a journalist, with any formal accusations. We also know that she didn't receive medical care, and according to the words of her cellmate, her weight was just 30 kilograms. But we still don't have clarity how she died, because Russians refused to return her body to the grieving parents. And when Russians did, we found body of our friend and colleague with a horrible signs of torture, and several internal organs were missing: eyes, brain, and part of trachea. And I tell this story for a reason. Victoria Roshina risked her life to tell the truth about the horror what Russia organized in occupied territories. She believed that truth matter, that when we get the information, we will take the right decisions and right actions. And despite this tragedy, I don't think that she was too naive. I also think that truth matter.
Yes, that courage has no boundaries or no gender, and the truth matters. And as you've related that story and the horror of it, it seems like it's the ultimate sacrifice to go to find yourself, to lose your life so early, doing what is right. And I guess it says to me, reinforces the horrors that you're experiencing all of the time, because I know you still live in Kiev. Maybe we change the topic a little bit. I recall that at Davos, Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, emphasised his view of the end of the rule-based international order and the need to build a more cooperative, resilient world. I'm keen to hear your views on this collapse and what consequences you see as you visit other countries, speak at forums, and meet with global leaders.
It's not a surprise for Ukrainian that the world order, which is based on UN Charter and international law, has collapsed. We told this for all these 12 years of Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. Because what it was, the annexation of Crimea, it was a precedent when one country officially annexed another country. It didn't happen since the Second World War. It's unprecedented. And what was the reaction of the world? There is almost no reaction. The world leaders continued to shake hands with Russian officials. They did business as usual. They built gas pipeline. They didn't react properly. And there is a good Russian proverb: appetite grows during the eating. So there is no surprise. It's a legitimate result of such irresponsible behavior that Russians decided that they can do whatever they want. So the world order has collapsed for Ukraine with this annexation. And I'm glad that finally it became obvious even for top political leaders.
So what do you believe it's going to mean for the rest of the world? Because it's happened in Ukraine, and there are some symptoms of it elsewhere. I'm just wondering how we might find our way through this, because it seems to me to be one of the most challenging times in recent history for us globally.
I think we first have to understand what's going on. It's not just a war between two states. This is a war between two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. And with this war, Putin attempts to convince the entire world that country with a strong military potential and nuclear weapon can break the UN Charter, can dictate its rules to entire international community and even forcibly change the internationally recognized borders. And if Putin succeeds, it will encourage other authoritarian leaders in different parts of the globe to do the same. So Ukraine found itself in the epicenter of events which will shape the world future. And this is very important to understand, that it's not just a problem of Ukraine.
Yes, I see that. And whether as a world broadly, this is being understood by the ordinary people, the people, and whether it's being understood in some political circles is a question yet to be answered, isn't it? That we're seeing it every day and we see it in various pieces of the media. I'm interested now to draw you more into the gender equality and what's going on in the world there. How does your leadership and your voice in human rights in Ukraine and globally give you the platform to cause dialogue and action to improve the place of women and gender equality? Because many of us believe it's certainly regressing rather than going forward and losing things.
Unfortunately, it's regressing. It's regressing because it's very connected with such important thing as freedom. And we are losing freedom in the world. 80% of people live in non-free or partially free societies. It means that people who have a real right to vote for whom they want to vote, who have a real right to say what they want to say, who have a real right to love whom their heart tell them to love or freely choose what gods they want to pray, these people are minority. And the problem is not just in facts that in authoritarian countries, the space for freedom is shrinking to the size to the prison cell. The problem is that we see the dangerous trends even in developed democracies. People started to put into questions the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and gender equality. And there is reason for this, because current generation in well-developed democracies, they inherited their democracy from their grandparents. They have never fought for it. They started to take it for granted. They became consumers of democracy. They consider freedom as a possibility to make a choice between different cheeses in supermarket.
That's right.
But freedom is very fragile. You can't attain something which you have once and forever. We make our own choice every day, and especially it's visible from the gender perspective. I will return to Russian war of aggression against Ukraine to explain this. In democratic countries, and even in democracy in transit like Ukraine, women can perform any role they want in family and society. But in authoritarian countries, like Russia, women can perform only a assigned role for them in families and societies. And this is a basis for the authoritarian regime. Because a way how people treat each other in society, it's always reflect a society idea what government can do towards its own people. And this is how private become political. And that is why in Iran, women can be killed for the wearing inappropriate clothes. In Afghanistan, women are prohibited to study in schools and universities. And in Russia, even domestic violence was decriminalized because once again, it's always just a projection what government is do towards its own people. And that is why in Ukraine, we Ukrainian women, in this war with Russia, we are fighting for our daughters because we want that our daughters will never face a situation that they have to prove someone that they are also human beings.
Exactly. And in our Zonta work, it's women's rights are human rights. And, I grew up in a different era to you, Oleksandra, and I recall some of that gender stereotyping. You know, we went into careers that were for women. We studied things that were more or less for women. And, you know, as a child of the 50s and the 60s, we started to break out of that in the 1960s through, you know, a huge groundswell of those ordinary women you were speaking about earlier. And the feminist movement, etc. And then I suppose we can take it back to women gaining the vote in various countries, you know, many, many decades ago. And for me and many of my friends and colleagues, and I hear from you, it's one of the biggest issues we face alongside of war and war crimes and human rights that you are working in. It goes hand in hand, doesn't it? That regression and potentially oppression of women.
Yes, the trend is dangerous. And from my opinion, what we have to do is the following. Women must support women. We must support fight of our sisters in different countries because their fight, it's our fight. Because we live in a very interconnected world and only spread of freedom make our world safer.
What do you see as the effect of social media and the broad brush of anything online and the online community in its effect around everything you work within and gender? I wonder if you're willing to make a few comments about that.
It's a huge problem. I see how we all unprepared for these challenges because how people see the world define their actions and their decisions. And now they live in artificial reality because they spend more and more time in internet and social networks that overloaded with fakes, with propaganda, with disinformation, with hate. And it's led to a situation that people start to lose their ability to make a distinction between lie and truth. Even people from the same small community, they have no more a shared sense of reality. But without a shared sense of reality, they can't do common actions. And now the question is, how, without common actions, we can overcome global challenges and protect our freedom and our democracy?
So as we see some countries pulling back and becoming more insular and looking within, it seems like it's becoming harder at global level for that collective support and collective action. And that's an observation for me. I don't know whether you agree or disagree, but that's how it looks. And I think as communities, we've done that over time. You know, we're not always good neighbours. We don't always know the people around us. And it just feels like we're shrinking rather than reaching out. I don't know.
I will add something to this observation. The public intellectuals told that we live in era of post-truth. But I think that we live in era of post-knowledge. What do I mean? The knowledge start to lose their value. People, they follow the advice of Instagram bloggers, but not of researchers and scientists. They will do what beauty celebrities in TikTok will tell them to do, but not follow the advice of professional doctors. This is what we have for current moment, this post-knowledge.
Yes.
And I observe that across the globe, people in different countries, they demand for simple solutions, which is weird. In a time of global storm, when the world order has collapsed and everything become hyper complex, to demand for simple solutions, and politicians, mostly populist, who promise them to give these simple solutions, they start to gain weight. And this is very dangerous development because probably we as a humankind, we can afford ourselves simple solutions during the peaceful time. Like you can treat, if you have a runny nose, you can treat this illness with jumps, for example.
Yes,
At
yes.
least it's don't hurt your body. But if you have oncology, I'm sorry, the delay of started intense therapy and the cost of this delay will be very high. So once again, probably we can allow ourselves this approach during the peaceful time, but we are not living in a peaceful time.
No.
We're living in time of global storm.
And interestingly, once upon a time, we used to say knowledge is power. But if we're living in a post-knowledge society, then knowledge is no longer power. And there's that balance between the fake and the reality. And I notice a lot of researchers and people I've spoken to speak about young men being the most at risk in that virtual environment, I suspect. It's just really interesting what we're finding, interesting and worrying and concerning. I'm wondering next what you rely on to sustain you, living and working in Kiev, traveling the world and enduring the daily hardships and suffering of the prolonged war. What is it that keeps you going and how do you sustain?
It's a 12th winter of the war and 4th winter of large-scale war. And it's very difficult because Russians deliberately destroyed energy grids, the very infrastructure where people need to survive during the sub-zero temperatures. We are regularly being bombarded by Russians' ballistic rockets and drones. And millions of people have restricted access or no access at all to heating, to light, to electricity, to water. People are literally freezing in their flats with this sub-zero temperatures. Winter is very cold. But people don't give up. And I see the huge wave of solidarity across the country. I would never wish anyone to go through this experience, but this dramatic time provides people opportunity to express the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make difficult but right choices, and to help each other. This is the main thing, because when we help in each other, only in that moment, we are acutely aware what does it mean to be human. So people inspires me, because when you look to these hundreds examples of solidarity, of courage, of true leadership, from ordinary people in different fields, you tell to yourself, if they can do it, you also can do it.
So it's hard for me to imagine, but that extreme need for resilience and just, I guess, getting through each day. And some of your colleagues and friends and family, it's just so unimaginable for many of us in other parts of the world. And if we go back to what we were talking about with the collective action and wanting countries to support each other, if it's about people supporting each other, it's also about countries supporting each other, isn't it? And more of that is needed. I have one other question I'm going to ask you. What do you think your superpowers are, or who you are, that gives you this strong voice and ability to persuade and influence others? What is it that you have that helps you do that?
I think it's a hope. And I think that we must define the word hope properly, because hope, it's not a confidence that everything will be fine. Hope, it's a huge understanding that all our efforts have a huge meaning. Because Our future is not just uncertain, it's also not pre-written. This means that we always have a chance and responsibility with our own efforts to create future which we want for us and for our children. And I think this logic, this prisma, that I'm looking to the words through the lens of hope and responsibility for my own action, this is probably my superpower.
That's really powerful to hear. I think that lens that you have as a superpower. As we move to wrap the conversation today, what key messages would you like to leave with me and with the people who are listening and watching?
I will repeat once again that we must support each other. The global storm is approaching. This system, which was created past century after the Second World War to prevent wars and mass violence, now it's just stalling. It's reproducing ritualistic movements for obvious reason. Even my smartphone has an expiration date. The system has never been reformed. So, unfortunately, it's easy to predict that such fires like wars and mass violence will emerge more and more often in different parts of the globe because this international wiring is faulty and sparks are everywhere. So my main message is that we have to support each other in this global storm. We have to support people, we have to support nations who are fighting for freedom. Because freedom, it's something which has no limitation in national borders. The same like human solidarity.
And freedom is fragile, and how we know that and work with that is so important. Oleksandra, I am in awe of the work that you and your colleagues do on your local and world stage and the influence that you're having. And I appreciate, as will all our listeners and Zonta International, your willingness to share your story so authentically and truthfully today. I thank you so much for doing that with me, and Zonta thanks you.
Well, thank you for this conversation. And thank you for that fact that your community support women. It's very important.